You should do. Baby, show me love, don't treat me like a second option. You chose me. I could give you everything you want, but if you don't try for me, I won't, baby. Step by step, trying to give you hints. Open up your eyes, offer some empathy. Look at me from your...
Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Reverend G. I'm here every Monday night on WEMS radio from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, Reverend G. And tonight I will be bringing you a very, very special guest who will talk to us about spiritual conversations and making a difference and an impact in the world. So, what I'd like to do is talk about spirituality from a practical perspective. How does it work in your everyday life? How can you use spiritual tools moment by moment? How can they support you? And right now, we're going through a lot. I mean, sometimes I don't even know, what's happening right now. Okay, so there's voting that's coming up, and it's very, very important that we go out and vote. I can't stress that enough. But there's so much talk about it, and so many opinions, and so much going on that we have to just find what's going to work for us and go out and vote. Is one of the messages that I'd like for everybody to hear, and one of the messages that I'm putting out there. At this point, voting is what we can do. So let's start there and move forward with our next steps. I'm also interested in making sure that you find joy in your life. I want everybody, live your best life, find some joy, but also with grace and ease. So you can find me on Instagram as Rev Grenetta and on Facebook and YouTube as Reverend Grenetta Mason. And I bring you inspirational messages and lots of information about finding joy and living your best life. Well, let's get to our first guest tonight. Tonight we have two great people from I Am Perspective, Nussy and Jorell. I Am Perspective is a community that supports people in having a voice. We all have a perspective, and I love that they give you a space to have a voice. They do workshops, they do corporate events, they host community events. They're really doing a lot in the community and internationally. So I'm really excited to have Nussy and Jorell on the show tonight. Hello, guys. How y'all doing?
Hello.
See, and also, they have a radio show on WEMS radio too. So, they're the pros and the experts. So we about to rock it out right now. So guys, introduce yourself and let people know who you are. We want to talk about, I Am Perspective, but I also want to talk about what you guys are doing, for you. I know Jorell's an artist, Nussy's writing a book, a lot of things are going on. So I want to talk about all of that. So introduce yourselves.
Well, thank you, Grenetta, for that warm introduction. It's great to see you. Just personally haven't seen you in a while, so it's great to see a warm smile. My name is Jorell Whitfield, and I'm one half of this amazing thing called I Am Perspective.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. I'll tell you why. Go ahead.
All right. And my name is Nussy, and I am the other half of I Am Perspective. You said, you're going to talk about I Am Perspective and us too, so I wasn't sure.
Right, because it's an umbrella. See, I could jump in there and be like, hey, I'm Jorell, and I do this, and boo, 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 and then Nussy's sitting here. No, I Am Perspective. But personally, I'm a spoken word artist. I'm a writer, a novelist, author of 4 books. I'm a teacher. I've taught middle school, high school, and I'm a coach. You know, so I would like to say I teach adults, I teach my peers. I believe I teach perspective. I'm a public speaker. I'm an Aquarius, and I'm,
Aquarius.
you know, I'm a lover of life.
All
Yes,
right.
love
Well, I'm an Aries. Just going with that one.
I'm a Pisces, right?
Right, like a Mrs. Rudolph
Yeah, throw it all out there.
Who am I? I am obviously the co-founder of I Am Perspective. I consider myself to be a conversation moderator. Just putting this out there just so everybody knows. One day I hope to be moderating one of those presidential debates. So that's my thing. I consider myself to be a bit of a journalist in terms of finding out information and getting information out to the public. I'm also a writer. I have a poetry book coming out that you just mentioned. I am a designer. I have my own merchandise line, so I'm a creative in that way. I have pillows and t-shirts and all that. What else do I do? That's about it for now. I mean, I do a lot of things.
Pete is a speaker, public speaker, coach, life coach, you know, just those little things.
Just those little things.
All of those things.
Yeah,
Right?
she'll leave that out, but just those little things.
Those little things. Great. So let's just jump right in and talk about I Am Perspective. I know that what I find interesting is I saw that you created it a couple of years ago, and it's just so timely now. Can you guys give a perspective of like what it is today, how it started, and you know how it's going?
All right. I guess that's me. So Jorell and I, you know, more than just being business partners, we're best friends. We've been friends for 20 years. And, you know, if you can't tell, like we're of different backgrounds. I'm a Bengali Muslim woman, and, you know, he's a Black man. I'm 5'2" and he's probably 6'2". I don't know. But we have a lot of differences, but we also have a lot of similarities. And we really found ourselves having a lot of conversations around what that looks like for, you know, people in our various backgrounds to come together and, you know, feel more connected and feel empathy and understand each other better and what that would look like. And so, you know, after having countless conversations, one day we're like, you know, let's talk to some other people as well. So that's how we started. We started off not as a business, so more so really just a community platform. Just really wanting to create a safe space for people to come together and talk.
Yeah, we wanted to answer a question. I think that makes us relatable to a lot of people. Our come from is, as Nussy just said, we didn't say, hey, let's go start a business and it be I Am Perspective. We said, why are people not talking to each other? Why are people not showing up for each other? Why we don't hate each other, so why are we not showing up for each other? And we sought to answer a question, and I Am Perspective was born. We said, okay, we don't have the answer. Let's sit some people down and let's get to it.
I have that same idea about spirituality because, you know, it's talked about, but how is it practiced, right? And can we really have really honest, authentic spiritual conversations? And we come from all different spiritual backgrounds too. Yeah. And in those teachings, sometimes that blocks the conversations too that you can have based on your teaching. So I like that you are a man and a woman, a Black man, because all the issues that can be different for each, and you can talk about them.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You had something more.
No, I was just gonna say, you know, bring various perspectives to the table. I think, you know, even in I Am Perspective, we're able to bring various perspectives, having those differences, right? So.
And the fact, like, we kind of braze over it. Braze is not the word, but I do think of braze, like a glaze over. But glaze is the word either. But not to, we glaze over the fact that we're friends, right? So ultimately, how many friends are there who are like, I'm not racist. I have white friends. I have Bengali friends. But what kind of conversations are you having with your friends? you know.
And we're finding that at this time very interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because the conversations are shifting. What we want to talk about is even shifting. What we want to even hear is shifting. So the conversations are changing. That's so true, you know?
And you start to hear different perspectives. We promise to only say that word once or twice in our interviews, but people end up saying it more than us. It's crazy, but
I know, because I start off different perspectives on spirituality, right? You know, people with different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
But what's great about that is being able to come together in non-judgment, being able to come together and have those real conversations is so important.
Which we need now more than ever, right? You know, you just mentioned that the types of conversations, they change, they shift, the people who want to take part of it. I think when we started 3 years ago, we had a different audience, and now that audience has kind of, you know, really widened since then, because now people are like, okay, we actually have to sit down and have these conversations. Right. Before it was kind of optional. It was like, oh, do I feel like it today on a Tuesday night at 6 p.m.? Maybe.
Right.
Right. So
no, but the shout out to all of those people. And again, you know, you being one of them, the early people who chose to, even if you just came to support a friend or whatever, you didn't have to. And we always would say that. It was like our Russell Simmons sign off of like, we know in New York, you don't have to be here sitting here talking to strangers. But that was confirmation for us that people needed this. That if people were willing to come out and come on the train and come from the Bronx and come from Queens to meet up and randomly talk about spirituality or homosexuality or racism on a Tuesday night, on a Thursday night, we knew that we had something. It was bigger than the answer. I think it became bigger than the answer we were trying to figure out. It was like, oh man, there's a community to serve.
Yeah.
Where people want to be heard, where people want to even get ideas in conversation, right? And just find a place. And we're seeing a lot more of that, because what I'm seeing is, as an African American, I pushed down all my hurt, all my everything to just move forward. So it bubbled up to the surface, right? During this time. So then it's like, so then what do you do with it, right? And then as I meet with a lot of people, they want to talk. There's conversations that need to be had. So I think that it's, although it was 3 years ago, it's so important right now what you guys are doing and the space that you're creating for people to continue to have those hard conversations and to continue to be able to move forward.
Yeah.
I know you guys, go ahead.
That point just right there, where you were saying, because so many things, this is how we moderate too. Things pop up and I'm like, oh man, but that bubbling up, you know, and I'll speak on that because I'm a Black man. What this work has taught me is that like everybody, if not everybody, a lot of people have that bubbling up. It's just theirs is different, you know. Ours has historical ties to it, different implications. You know, being Black in America, we have a whole different. But then when we open the space up, you know, Japanese Americans feel that way. You know, Muslim women feel that way. Gay white men feel that way. Asians and on and on and on. It's not. It's not to compare, but once we get to open up, like everybody can sit there and we can relate. I can a little bit more.
Relate, and I also think what you mentioned about just speaking, people need spaces to speak. It's cathartic, getting things out. Like there's a lot of things that we're thinking about, that we have questions about, but we don't have the spaces to have that conversation, right? I don't find myself on a daily basis like, oh hey, you want to talk about religion today? Like, you know, and it's like, which, you know, you being a spiritual advisor, coach, you know, Reverend, right? We have touched that topic of spirituality. We've touched the topic of religion and spirituality and what the difference is and what that looks like. And it's been very interesting, the various, you know, perspectives people have. So
yeah, we could what was I just generally ask my guests to talk about their early spiritual religion experience and then how they've evolved to where they are now. So it'll be interesting to hear, what that's like for each one of you.
Okay, well, I'm Baptist. No, I'm not Baptist. I would say that. I was born and raised in the Baptist church.
Okay.
Here in Queens, and I had my own personal journey. Really, very long story short, one day I didn't want to go to church. My mom didn't go to church, but she sent me to church with my neighbors every day. One day I had questionings and I said, "Hey, Mom, I don't want to go." She's like, "You don't want to go? All right, don't go." And she didn't force it on me like I believe her generation, the aunts and parents kind of forced it on her. And it allowed me to carry the religion with me, but not be like married to it. And so as I started developing my spirituality, I was younger, so I was combating religion. I was mad at it and how it taught me and all these things, but I was still anchored in a lot of what I learned from it. By the time I get to the IAP years, let's call it that, it was like a culmination of a journey of, okay, here's now how I feel spiritually. This is how I want to show up in the world spiritually. And again, it wasn't something that Nussy and I sat and said, "Hey, I've evolved spiritually. Let's go on this iron perspective journey." But she showed up for me in a time where I was evolving spiritually and looking for that to do. And it came out.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you just mentioned, like the struggle in childhood with religion. And I've had a similar, I grew up in a Muslim household. And, we had this conversation the other day of like, when you're born into a religion, what does it mean? Like, are you choosing it, or are you kind of just like, oh, this is it, because this is what you were born into? And I think I kind of always had a little bit of a problem with that. And I wanted to know, I wanted to be like, no, I made my decision. And so I was always very rebellious around religion. And I always had kind of this like negative implication around organized religion. And because of that, I actually only recently realized the difference between spirituality and religion, by the way. Right? Like, there's actually a difference between the two, that you can have a spiritual practice or spirituality and, not be tied to a religion. And so I think, for me, that's been something that I've been really more focused on these past few years, is like, okay, what does that mean for me, regardless of religion, regardless of all of that. And so that's been my personal journey.
That is interesting, being a Muslim background and then Christian background, that you can come together, right? And work together and find the common ground, even though, you would be at odds, the Christians and the Muslims, right, around religion,
A thing that, because we've talked so much about it, and we've also actually done events where we brought so many other religions in to have these conversations. And a larger conversation to be had is that we really got to talk about generations in religion.
That's true.
It's not about religion. I know it's spirituality, but whereas it seems like Nussy and I are at these opposite ends of the world, we're really more closer in our culture, in our generational culture, than our religious culture. We're more connected to being 80s babies from Queens than she is being a Muslim and I am to be a Christian. We're experiencing a lot more in our generation, be it Asian, I want to say, if you, whatever religion that you're coming from, you're here now, right? And you're of this culture. We're meeting a lot more people our age who are trying to find a common ground, and like spirituality becomes the common ground.
That's interesting, 80s babies, because that is.
Oh, I forgot. I'm with my woman co-founder. I'm never supposed to speak of age. She's born in the mid 90s. I'm at
No, but I think about it just in terms of the the whole idea really around religion and spirituality. And even when you look at younger, say if we were looking millennials between 25 and 29, it looks different to them than it would look for someone 30 to 40, right? So when you talk about, looking at it from that perspective, it makes sense. Because my generation, we were forced to go to church, and we went Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You were always in church, right? But it was different. We did not have a choice. Well, you had a choice. Shemaya, you said, I don't want to do it anymore. And it was like, okay, you don't have to. That's different, know?
Yeah, and I recognize that that's a privilege that my mom didn't have,
Right, exactly.
I mean, my niece who's 7, I imagine it's a whole completely different situation for her now, like for her, like it's even less so. Like I don't even think like it's as deep of a conversation as it was when I was younger, right? So like
and think about that. Her niece is 7 years old. She goes to a school with all kinds of mixed kids. I don't know what the schools look like when you were 7 to even have that conversation.
No, I was in Memphis, Tennessee. They were all Black. At 7, so there was no diversity or any type of diverse conversation going on then at 7 for me. But I know when my daughter was 7, then there was another whole world and another whole conversation was going on, and she had interesting experiences being a little Black child, right, in a white world, right? And the different things that even at kindergarten, that were imposed on her by other kids, you get to watch at a very young age. It starts, and that's when kids form their opinions. So it just starts so early. So even at 7, some conversations are worth having. I saw this great book, the new alphabet book, which teaches them like words. You guys have seen that book, like J is for joy and H is for humility, right? And all that. I was like so excited about that because at an earlier age, you're teaching them the words around compassion and humanity and all of that at a young age. And I found a great way to teach it without having hard conversations or imposing these ways of being on little kids, right?
Yeah. And I don't think you even need to have like conversations, like, exposure is something. Being in groups, being in social settings, education, school, however that looks, and being exposed to people with different backgrounds. Like, I don't think, growing up, we certainly didn't have all these conversations around race and gender and all of that, right? And that didn't prevent us from being friends back then either. And so it's like, but only way for us to be friends, we're in Queens, which is the epicenter of diversity. We're in these neighborhoods that, in my school, I think we had over 150 languages represented, right? So it's like, you're gonna have, when you're in a situation like that, there's no choice but to become friends and to, learn each other and become acquainted with each other, right? And so what would that look like if more people were exposed to people of various backgrounds and prevented those guards from developing in the first place? Go ahead.
Right. I hear what you're saying. And Jorell, you were a teacher, right? So I do know that at some point there was this whole thing about how the charter schools were taking away diversity in the schools, right? Because they were just the same kind of, a lot of the Black kids go to this charter school, right? So it seemed like then we were moving back to removing all of that diversity, from the schools, right? So it's interesting, Nussy, that you say that, and I think about how we might have gone a little bit backwards, right, in creating this whole charter school situation. Especially here in the city.
Yeah, the city is, I don't know, the city's a mess. The city is a mess with education. It always has been. And if I was to speak spiritually, I say this is the cleansing that not only New York needs the education system, but the
Yeah,
country
because they
and
really do
possibly
have to
the world.
revamp it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I know how it was when I was a kid going here. Nussy went to school here. We saw what it was. You know, it wasn't the worst in the country. I've seen terrible school systems. New York is pretty good, but with it, it was still not serving the community for real. Um,
Mhm.
and it's being exposed now without going into all of its details, but it's being exposed in so many ways. And everyone, it's not just that people think it's just we're inside and it's COVID, but I think that we're spiritually, the vibration is rising, is raising,
Mhm.
rising. um, the
A whole
whole,
energy. It's an overall energy.
right,
And
without being,
COVID has impacted it, right? And in the sense that too, people need some mental health support. And spiritual tools and spiritual practices can really support you mentally when we're going through everything that we're going through now.
We all
Right?
need mental health after all of this.
and
Yes.
look what COVID did. COVID put us in a position where we can talk about mental health to people who have they've held that off as something for people who are crazy, who are dead,
Yes,
whatever people
exactly.
feel. But now that we're all in this cage, we've all been put in this. It's okay now.
No, no,
Right.
no, we
You
got
know?
mental health problems. Sorry, I gotta stop
Yeah,
hunting.
right.
And it's okay for me to get on here and say, sometimes I get a little crazy, right?
Right.
Exactly.
But not in that sense, but in a real sense to address that mental health, the how important it is,
Right.
and
Yeah,
how we need to address our mental health.
Yeah, that it's not just an illness, right? Because I think people only want to talk about it when it's considered an illness and not like this is something that you have to maintain over time. Like self-care shouldn't be such a thing that you do when you're in burnout mode, right? You should be doing it all the
All
time.
the time. Right, exactly. And that is the message. I know that, we have a lot of things to talk about. I did want to talk about the program that you guys are doing around being an ally. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and what are your expectations from that workshop program that you guys are doing?
well, essentially, we created a workshop called "How to Be an Ally." If we can make it simple
How
as
to be an
possible,
ally.
you know, to make it very simple, many people have blatantly been asking about allyship, especially with the summer that we just had. Um, and it's become a more robust conversation on all forms, right? So it naturally fit into what we were doing.
Mhm.
I want to say, flex our DEI arms because we were doing DEI this whole time, but like
Mhm.
we finessed it in a way that people needed it
Yeah.
for.
As I think for us, right, like in terms of DEI, there's a lot of diversity training programs that are now looking to address, you know, anti-racism. This is what they call
Mhm.
it, anti-racism, right? And for us, we don't come from that. We don't come from that angle.
Mhm.
We come at it from an angle of allyship. Like, what are we really looking for? We want people
Mhm.
to be humane. We want people to be empathetic, compassionate, caring, care about, like just be good people. How about that, right? Let's start
Mhm.
with that. And what
Mhm.
does that really look like in your everyday life,
Mhm.
right? So, I think people they see how to be an ally, and they might maybe that confuses them of even who should be taking the course.
No,
Yeah, that's
because when you see it, it's like, oh, wow. For me, it's a word that popped up that was supposed to have a new meaning besides supporting, right?
Right,
In
right,
the sense like it,
yeah,
right?
that's the thing. Like these things happen, and people come in, even with diversity and inclusion. Like we all knew what these words were. We didn't need them to be coupled together to now mean something. We know what
Right,
diversity means. We know
right, right.
inclusion is and everything. And it's the same thing with allyship. We're not jumping on a fad, Nussy and I, with this is what ally is. It's like we all need to be allies, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because allyship and diversity and all of the accessibility, I can't remember the names from, but because it's happening and pushed to the forefront during race, during a racial tension, now diversity and allyship gets tied naturally to race.
Yeah.
You know, when you say
Okay, got it. I
allyship,
hear what you're saying.
you're being clicked to hear, well, I'm black, I don't need allyship, but I don't need to talk to white people about allyship. But Nussy and we built this from the ground up, from our personal
Yeah,
experience.
allyship could be like you said, it's not race. So I'm a woman, he's a man. There's various forms that we can be in allyship to each other just based on our gender, right? There's moments where he can support me in ways where he realizes, right? And that's what we kind of get into in our workshop is the various ways of action steps, right? Not just talking about it, but what are the various forms of allyship? What does that exactly look like in actual steps? And
Because what is a friend?
right.
You know, what is your best friend if not your number one ally? What is a family member? People are taught they're receiving this as if they don't know what allyship is. We all know what allyship is. When we put a post out, hey, check my event out. We're looking for allyship. We're looking for the people in our circle who believe in what we're doing to step in and be allies. It's not, and so that's what we created. We created a workshop that addressed the individual. We're not trying to berate people with the history of, you know,
Like, how do you come and support us and be an ally with Black people? But you know, and I guess too, like I said, it's one of those words that popped up now, and everybody is talking about it. So when I saw the workshop, I was like, oh, I wonder if that's related to, you know, teaching people about being allies, because there's a lot of people who are talking about, well, what does that mean and what is it? But it's interesting that you're saying to look at it from the perspective of male and female and not just being allies because with Black people, or even having something to say to white people about Black people and how to be with them, kind of thing. So I can
we're
hear
talking about how to, which means we're providing tools. We're not just talking. We're like, here's some tools to, again, just for one example, how to be a better ally to your mom. If your mother's here, your child is here. Talked to somebody recently and their child was voting differently than they were, you know, and we could see right there how they would fit right into our workshop. Nothing to do with race, nothing to do with showing up for somebody's sexuality, but how do you be an ally for your child when they want to vote somebody differently? You know?
That's really cool. I really like that. I know you guys did a training on like unconscious biases. Right, I like it. Yeah, everything you do is so deep, right? Unconscious bias, right? So
unconscious bias is an offering that we do, and we are going to be having it again soon. We have. Everyone has a bias. We all have a bias. And bias shows up in various ways. It develops in various ways. Sometimes our bias, you know, I guess that's a workshop instead of me like telling you all the different biases, but we all have biases. And acknowledging them, and you know, we have the safe space of actually saying it, right? So like, one of the things I think I do that I'll throw it out there that I kind of sometimes scare people with is like, yo, tell me what you thought when you first saw me, right? Like, Grenetta, so I'm asking right now, Grenetta, what was the first thing when you first saw me, before you knew me, right? What was your first impression of me?
That you were really quiet, right? And you appeared to, you know, there was a confidence, but it was quiet. Like, you know, I'm like in your face, out there, you were like a reserved confidence about you. That's what's my first impression.
Okay. All right. So sometimes I also, you know, I think maybe some of the most honest answers, it's like sometimes if you really, depending on which, you know, format you see me in, I might have like resting bitch face, right? Where I'm like, is she even nice? Like she's not even smiling, right? So And so just like, but based on, you know, I think people have these expectations of people, or they think things about people, right? Or maybe my face, I don't know, right? It was like, oh, she's not nice. Like, that's
right.
she's
No.
not personable, right? And so like, based on what? Like sometimes, I mean, that's a simple answer. It could be based on a whole bunch of other things that could be triggering a whole set of whatever, who knows.
I know, we were talking about when people look at you and they, last week I was having a conversation about that, and they make judgments and opinions about you just by looking at you. So that's why, you know, that whole thing about first impressions, right? It's interesting. They say
what we do, we love like in your face work. We're not obtrusive, but we like putting things bluntly. And when Nussy's saying that we all have an unconscious bias, when she asked that question to you and you have an answer, you might have had several other answers. That's the tricky part, right?
Right.
You know, but the point is like, even if we don't mean to, we have these biases.
Right, absolutely.
We want to put people in a position to recognize that, because there's steps to take after that. And that leads back to allyship and how to be a better ally.
And recognizing your biases, and you can move on from it, right?
Like, because if you're not going to recognize it, it's going to keep popping up in your life. You're going to keep straying away from people. We've had Nussy and I sitting here in our events, we've had people say, hey, I have an unconscious bias against Black men. I'm still afraid of them, and so forth and so on. But we created a space for that to be said to not only me, but several other Black people. And then the air is diffused, because she's not blaming me. She's not like, oh, all Black people are blah. She's just,
and you're not getting defensive either.
Right.
I think that's the other part, right? It's like,
oh
wait, what you guys say about me? Like, so, and so I think that's something, just a signature of Iron Perspective in general, is that we are not a space of debate, right? We are a space of actual conversation and just listening. Sometimes it's listening. You might not agree. You might be like, this is, you know.
It's the simplest thing. We're the rarest field in America, a space where nobody's interested in debate. Every aspect and component of our life in America is competition, is debate. We compete on who has the most groceries, who has the best car. We compete on teams. We compete for politics. We compete to Android and Apple ourselves.
Right, absolutely.
You know, I'm telling somebody about a feature on my phone, and they're like, "Well, nobody cares about iPhone." I was like, I ain't trying to fight you. I was trying to, but that's our natural comfort.
Right.
So we create this little corner of the world and people are shocked. They step in and say, "Oh, nobody's judging me. I get to say something, and nobody has a snapback. You know, nobody has a Twitter response." And get back to some humanity when we would talk things out.
I also would like for you guys to share with us. I talk about creating a spiritual toolkit. And what a spiritual toolkit are different spiritual practices that you can just pull out and use whenever you want. So the toolkit has several different ones in it. And so I like to talk to people about things to put in their toolkit. So what would be, for each of you guys, your top 3 go-to spiritual practices? Because I know we have a lot of them.
I want you to go first. Just like,
gratitude, breathing. Those are the first 2 that just popped up out of my mind. Gratitude, breathing, and really solitude. You know, I'm around people a lot. I'm around my bestest friend in the whole world from the scratch, and we do.
Say he needs time.
We do a lot of work for Iron Perspective, and it takes us being around. Even when we weren't around each other, we were talking all the time. And she has her own life, I have mine. And I'm around people. I take time for myself. I got a scooter. I'm not ashamed of it. I jump on that scooter and I'll go get lost. I'll turn my phone off. So yeah, breathing, gratitude, no matter what, good, bad. Gratitude, breathing, solitude.
I want to say solitude, but in a different way than him. I just like I don't need to necessarily be alone, but I need to like just have my own space to be within my own head. Like I know that sounds a little,
Right in the room with a lot of people in your own head.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just need to like, all the crazy thoughts, like doing all this work. I think people don't understand, all the topics that we covered. It comes from this like place. And sometimes it's a lot dealing with all the different
Mhm.
thoughts and all the different things that we're working on. We have so many things that we're working on. And so it's like just space away from that, right? So when I say solitude, I mean that. Um, practicing some empathy, like I think we throw around the word empathy a lot in our work. But sometimes that empathy is for ourselves also, like that, and that's something that like we've been learning recently, especially myself, of like, what does that look like to give myself not feel bad about not getting certain things done or not, getting everything done or being at some place that we're not at right yet, Um,
Mhm.
and the third one, um, treating myself. I like to be taken care of. As soon as they open up the nail salons, I'm not gonna lie, I was in there, right? Like I yeah, I like, with all the work that I do, I don't feel bad about also treating myself and taking care for self-care and doing the nice things and feeling good about myself in that way as well.
And as a man, I'm jumping in on it. I have learned a lot of that from Nussy. I found myself in getting pedicures. Like, you know
Mhm.
what? Absolutely right. You're right, Nussy. This was a great
Yeah.
call.
Treat yourself, right? Um, I know that you both are artists or writer, artists. Let's shift over and talk about your creativity.
Mhm.
And during and as I hear you guys talk, you talk about you doing so many things, this and so much of that. How much time are you spending to your creativity? Has it been stifled, enhanced? And with COVID, we're in. So, what has been the impact on your creativity?
I want to hear you first.
Oh, okay. All right.
You got a
See.
whole thing going on.
Um, how does it impact? Okay, so on a larger scale, right, with a lot of things going on, there's maybe less time to focus on the creativity, right?
Hmm.
But at the same time, we are, as creators, you can't help but create. And so
Hmm.
there's always that in you. And so, um, you know, myself, I'm writing poetry. Well, the book is done. It's coming out soon.
Oh, okay.
There's another book that I'm working on. I know Jorell's working on some books as well. And because of all the work that we do, we've had to kind of almost, next month is, I'm not even saying it right, NaNoWriMo
You are.
or NaNoWriMo,
Hmm.
um, which is a writing challenge.
Right, National Writing Month or something.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're
Yes,
actually
exactly.
tying it in with our work and giving ourselves a month to do some writing for ourselves. We have,
Hmm.
you know, we're writing history, right?
Right.
Book. So
Mhm.
we're going to be writing next month. That's our give back to ourselves, I think, a little bit.
Mm.
And that's in November. So I'll say for me, I've been very creative prior to COVID. I get 4 books that are published. The last book I released a year and a half ago. I intended to release the next one this year. And I'm prefacing that because I'm used to writing and doing all this stuff, and I really haven't done any of that during the pandemic.
What are your books? What are your books and what are the topics? Are they?
Oh, I have 2 poetry books,
Oh,
and
okay.
I have a novel and a short story mix. I would say,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Great.
So
So,
one full novel, and then I have 2 poetry books. The
mm,
next book that I was writing was going to be my third poetry book, handwritten. The last book that I published was a handwritten artwork piece. That
okay.
was really fun because it was actual poetry, but I got to draw the cover and really be artistic. And I, I say all of that because I haven't really felt any of that in these past 8 months, for real. I've been fortunate and privileged, I can say, to have Iron Perspective. So a lot of my creative work that would be poems and doodlings has gone into necessary work for Iron Perspective. So without, and this is what I'm learning to tell other creatives, right? Like, if you're a poet, then you might have to learn how to be something else than a poet, just creatively. You don't have to abandon poetry, but you're more than a poet. You can be if you're a playwright, you're more than a playwright. You got a novel in you somewhere. You got a short story in you somewhere, and you don't have to force yourself to do it. I've been doing writing so long that this year I really allowed myself to not. I didn't feel it, and I didn't beat myself up for it. I kept saying like, "Yo, we're in a pandemic. We're in a nobody's ever been through this before."
Right.
And
That's like giving yourself grace. It's about self-care, not to beat
literally
yourself
just
up,
wrote
right?
that word down just a moment ago.
Oh,
Grace.
that's Granada's favorite.
That's right. Grace and ease,
Yeah.
right? We don't have to
Hey,
let up on it, right?
if you're hearing this right now, you are in a pandemic.
Right.
Anybody, don't let Instagram and Facebook and everybody tell you differently. The social media, everybody's doing their best. People are out on beaches still somehow. People are making money and grinding, but nobody's really telling you that they're hurting and they're tired and they're exhausted and they miss human interaction. You don't get that on an Instagram post.
This is a part of mental health.
Yeah, that's the part. That's what we were talking about. And where do they say it though? You know what? Where? And that's why I think it's important to have these spaces for conversation, open up places for people to really be able to express what's going on for sanity. Absolutely for sanity, because I consider myself joyful, happy, all that. But I had to do a lot of spiritual practices these past few months. You have to pull out everything, right? Yeah.
That's not working. What's next? All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Constant shift and constant.
And even we're on this platform, and again, as I'm just saying, it makes it seem like we have all these things going on, and we do. Like, this has been a really great time for our business. We're growing, but we're very much in this, and we're very much stressed daily. And just like you said, we're very much feeling this and having to reach for different tools. And a lot of what we create are tools for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And
we have something coming up. We have something coming up because you were just saying outlets. We haven't announced it yet.
Okay.
But we will be announcing it Empath Hour.
Okay. That's good. More where people to come in and have conversations. It's called Impact Hour.
Empath
Hour.
Empath. Damn. Okay.
Yeah, so very shortly when we first did our first conversation when the pandemic, when quarantine started, the first event that we had, it was just this overwhelming group of people who are used to holding spaces for other people, and they really had nowhere to go. So we're not the ones to tell you you're an empath, that's whatever. If that resonates with you,
you come
created
to
a space for
and people are looking for that too, a way to express and get in more information about it. And community. What I find people are looking for really is community.
Yeah.
And because we were so used to being out, touching people, being around people, doing all those things, now it's shifted, right?
Right.
So we have to create these little communities, these pods, I would say, where we can go and be nourished and talk to people. And I like that you guys are continuing to create spaces like that for people. We are getting close to closing, but I wanted you guys to share, you did talk about the one workshop, what's next, and any message that you would like to give the listeners today?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, first, then, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for this space, because this is along the lines of what we were just talking about, finding other tools and outlets. We want to reach as many people to come along the band, join the band. We've been doing this for years now. We have a family. We have a group of people who show up to this. So it's exciting to meet new people. The event that Nussy was talking about, the first one that we have is this upcoming Sunday.
Sunday at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
It'll be Sunday at 6 o'clock. And again, it's an impact hour. We're not going to hold people long. We want to get people in for an hour. We want to give them a good space to express themselves and network in a spiritual, uplifting way.
Yeah, and for the work that we do, we're really focusing on the elections this month, right? Leading into this very important time. So all month long, we have been sharing useful information around politics, around your rights, history, things that you may not know, right? And so next Wednesday at 7 p.m., we're having our election special perspective. And so that's an open dialogue. Everyone it's an open conversation. It's going to be in our general signature I Am Perspective 101 style. And
and those are the ones we love. That's home base for us. And it's a challenge because it's politics. And people really, I think people show up sometimes just to test us. To be like, can we really talk about politics?
Say this?
Yeah, right. Because it's like right now, that's the most stressful thing going on, right? With people, this election coming up. And
the crazy thing about it, like Nussy says next Wednesday, and to Nussy and I, we're like, okay, what happens in 2 Wednesdays from now? That's why we're having this conversation. Not to rile people up or see who you want to vote for, but we're going to be here for 2 Wednesdays.
We still got to deal with each other regardless of who's going to be.
Whatever happens, we still, yes. Yeah. I'm working with this group of powerful women collective, we call it. We're throwing this huge dance party this Friday to push the vote. And we're going to come in and we're going to dance and we're going to talk about, we're going to mostly dance. But the idea, right, is to go and encourage people to vote, push the vote, let's vote. Go out and let's vote. And there's just so much talk about it. It just gets exhausting sometimes, right? To just navigate. What do we figure out? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And be respectful of other people and other people's choices and what others want to do. So this time I've learned to, I'm a Democrat, if you're a Republican, I'm not going to be that mad at you anymore, right? I've learned to allow.
How do you say that?
Go ahead.
The topic for this week, right? You want to tell them about it?
What topic?
Go ahead.
For this week.
Oh, Black Republicans, yes.
Like, you're a Black Republican?
Yeah, right. So no.
You're
she said, wait, all right, it is time to end this. No,
but the whole point I'm trying to make is, as we sit and we talk about, let everybody have their perspective and non-judgment and how people do and choose, and I'm saying being able to not be so angry as I think about, so I'm seeing this and you're seeing that and we're here. Okay, I'm okay. It's something that takes time, and it takes getting to that space of not judgment. It's like not judgment.
It's really an easier thing than people think. They think they have to try to figure somebody else's perspective out. We never ask that. Just by listening for somebody's perspective, you've already dropped your guard.
Exactly.
You've already put yourself in a position. What's exhausting is trying to change people's perspective. Trying to change people's ideas. That's why it's exhausting. If you, and I'm saying you, and for anybody who hears this, because I know I've come to this resolve. Nussy has as well. Yeah. This is the end message, right? You are in a pandemic. You don't have the spiritual bandwidth to beef with people who are going to vote for somebody else. You know, if you don't want to interact with them, maybe don't interact with them. We don't align.
Mm.
And you might not align with them right now,
Right.
voting time, but come
Right.
next month, you might need them for something. And
Right.
that's what we're talking
You know,
about.
honestly, perspective, that's my, I guess, perspective is a superpower, right? Like understanding someone else's viewpoint gives some level of power to you and gives some level of like understanding where now you can deal with them differently because now you understand where they're coming from. And it's just, it's information.
And you can manage your energy. That's what people really, that's like a massive thing. Like how much energy do you give being mad at a Trump supporter or being mad at a liberal if you are a Trump supporter? Keep your energy. Keep your energy.
Yeah, keep it right. Because it's not going to help anything, right? keep it. No.
Not gonna change your mind.
Right, exactly.
You know?
So,
but if you listen, they might be more susceptible to hearing you out.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's
well, guys, it's been really, really good having you. And I'm sure we could go on and on because I thought of something else, but then I looked around and it's 9:00 already. So thank you guys. And we'll be looking for more from you. And have a great evening. And
thank you, Granada, for having us.
Appreciate you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you. www.ironperspective.com. Much love.
Yes,
Prof too. Shout out to him.
Yes, shout out to WEMS Radio. Yes.
WEMS Radio, right? Thank you guys for joining me tonight.
All right.
It's Reverend G on WEMS Radio here every Monday night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. You can find me on Instagram as Rev Granetta and on Facebook and YouTube as Reverend Granetta Mason. So you have a great day and live your best life with grace and ease.